Elena sat quietly by the window of the train, watching the long fields and distant hills pass by like slow-moving paintings. The train wheels made a soft rhythm that felt almost calming, but her heart was still full of worry. She had never traveled this far before in her entire life. Everything outside the window looked unfamiliar, and every mile took her farther away from the small town she had known since childhood. But she did not regret leaving. Her old life held nothing for her anymore, no family, no comfort, and no real chance to build a good future. She had agreed to become a mail-order bride because she needed a new beginning. She was not searching for romance or promises. She only wanted a safe place to live, someone who would treat her with simple respect, and a life where she could breathe without fear of loneliness. When she read the letter from the cowboy named Caleb, she had felt a small spark of hope. His words were honest and gentle. He wrote about his ranch and how he needed companionship. Not just a partner to share chores, but someone he could talk to at the end of the day. There was no demand, no pressure, only a quiet invitation. That made her trust him enough to take this step. Even so, her hands trembled slightly as she held her small suitcase. She kept wondering what he would be like in person. What if he didn't like her? What if she couldn't adjust to the new life? What if the ranch was too difficult for her to handle? All these questions spun in her mind like a breeze she could not escape. She closed her eyes for a moment and took a slow breath. She reminded herself that she had survived many difficult years. She could survive anything again. As the train slowed near the small platform, Elena's heart beat faster. She saw only a handful of people waiting. Some were picking up packages, others greeting relatives, and a few men wearing dusty boots and wide hats. She searched their faces, wondering which one might be Caleb. She had only seen a faded photograph of him, just a simple portrait where he stood straight with a calm expression. He had kind eyes. She remembered that clearly. That photograph had been tucked in her pocket the whole journey, and she had taken it out more times than she wanted to admit. The train finally stopped with a gentle shake. People around her began to gather their belongings. Elena stood up slowly, smoothing her dress and making sure her hair was neat. Her legs felt a little weak, but she forced herself to step into the aisle. This was her new beginning. She had to face it with courage, even if courage felt small inside her right now. When she stepped down onto the platform, the warm sun touched her face. She blinked, adjusting to the brightness. Dust rose gently in the air with every footstep around her. She looked left, then right, trying to see if anyone recognized her. For a moment, she felt lost among strangers. Then she saw someone walking toward her, tall, with broad shoulders and a gentle smile. He took off his hat politely as he approached. It was him, Caleb. He stopped a few steps away, careful not to make her uncomfortable. His eyes were the same as in the photograph, kind, steady, and warm. He looked at her not with judgment but with welcome, as if he was truly happy she had come. "You must be Elena," he said softly. She nodded, unable to speak for a second. She had imagined this moment many times, but the real thing felt much different, more overwhelming but also strangely comforting. Caleb smiled a little more. "I'm Caleb. I'm glad you made it safely." There was a sincerity in his voice that eased her heart just a little. Elena finally found her voice. "Thank you. The trip was long, but I am fine." He nodded gently. "I hope the journey wasn't too tiring. If you'd like, we can rest for a moment before heading to the ranch." Again, there was no pressure, no urgency, just consideration. Elena noticed how careful he was with his words, how he stood close enough to be polite but far enough to give her space. This small detail made her feel less nervous. Caleb reached for her suitcase. "May I?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. His manners were simple but thoughtful, something she had not experienced often in her life. He carried the suitcase as if it weighed nothing and walked beside her to the wagon waiting near the edge of the platform. The wagon was sturdy, with 2 calm horses tied at the front. The ranch must have been a long ride away, she guessed. As they sat down in the wagon, there was a brief silence. It wasn't uncomfortable, but both were unsure how to begin. Elena looked at the open land stretching around them. The fields looked endless, touched by sunlight, peaceful and quiet. It was very different from what she was used to. Caleb noticed her looking and said softly, "It takes time to get used to the open space. When I first moved here years ago, even I felt lost for a while." She turned to him with a small, surprised smile. "Really?" "Oh, yes," Caleb chuckled lightly. "The land looks simple, but it takes time to learn its ways. But it's a good place, a calm place." He paused, then added in a sincere tone, "I want you to feel at home here. You're not expected to learn everything at once. We'll take it slow." His words eased her again. He wasn't making demands. He wasn't expecting perfection. He was simply offering a steady hand. The wagon moved smoothly along the dirt path. The wind brushed against her hair gently. Elena found herself relaxing without realizing it. She watched the sky, the birds flying freely, the soft sway of the grass. Caleb occasionally pointed out landmarks, a small river, a hill that glowed during sunset, a line of oak trees he planted years ago. Each detail he shared was simple, but it helped her understand the world she was entering. After a while, Caleb asked quietly, "If there's anything you want to tell me, or anything you want to ask, you can, but only when you feel ready. You don't have to share anything today." Elena appreciated that even more than she expected. She wasn't ready to talk about her past, and it comforted her to know she didn't have to. She looked at him and said softly, "Thank you. I just need some time." "That's all right," Caleb replied. "We have time. Plenty of it." There was something peaceful in the way he said it, as if he truly meant it. As they continued toward the ranch, Elena noticed how Caleb held the reins steady, calm, confident. He didn't seem like a man who raised his voice or lost his patience. He seemed gentle, someone who understood hard work, yet remained thoughtful. She wondered what his life had been like. She wondered what made him decide to seek a mail-order bride. She wanted to ask, but she stayed quiet for now. Caleb glanced at her again. "If you ever feel unsure or uncomfortable, you can tell me. I want this to be a place where you feel safe." Safe. It was a word she had longed to hear for so many years. She held on to that word gently in her heart. The sun was beginning to lower when the ranch finally came into sight. It wasn't grand or fancy. It was humble, made of warm wood, surrounded by fields, fences, and grazing animals, but it looked peaceful, like a place where a new life could quietly begin. Elena felt her breath catch slightly. This was where she would live now. This was where she would build her future. Caleb stopped the wagon in front of the house and looked at her with a soft smile. "Welcome home, Elena. If you're willing, this can be your home too." She looked at the house, then at him. His expression held no pressure, only an invitation. For the first time since she left her old town, she felt a small but real warmth in her chest, a sense that maybe she had made the right choice. She stepped down from the wagon slowly, feeling the earth beneath her shoes. The air smelled fresh, clean, untouched. Caleb carried her suitcase inside, then paused by the doorway and looked at her with gentle respect. "You're not here to replace anything," he said quietly. "You're here to begin something new. We can learn together, one day at a time." Elena felt something inside her soften. She didn't know what the future held. But right now, she felt calmer than she had in years. Her journey had been long and uncertain. But standing here at the doorway of her new life, she felt a small, hopeful whisper inside her heart. Maybe this cowboy would show her a life she never expected. Maybe this place could truly become home. Maybe this simple beginning could lead to something deeper, something warm, steady, and kind. And for the first time, Elena allowed herself to feel hope, soft and gentle, like the evening light settling over the ranch. Elena woke up early the next morning, long before the sun had fully risen. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The soft smell of wood, the quiet creak of the small cabin walls, and the gentle sound of the breeze outside felt unfamiliar. Then the memories came, slowly, her long journey, the dusty platform, Caleb's gentle smile, and the peaceful ranch that lay outside these walls. She sat up in bed, feeling both nervous and hopeful. This was her new home now. She stepped to the window and pushed the curtain aside. The ranch looked calm in the early morning light. The sky was a soft mix of pale pink and gold, spreading across the wide land. Horses moved in the distance, slow and steady, like they were waking up too. Elena felt something warm fill her chest. Back in her old life, mornings were always filled with hurry and worry. Here, the morning felt quiet, like the world was inviting her to breathe. She put on her clean dress and brushed her hair. She wanted to make a good start. She didn't know exactly what her tasks would be, but she wanted to help and learn. She opened the door gently and stepped into the small living area. Caleb was already awake. He stood near the stove, preparing breakfast, the soft sound of sizzling pans filling the room. When he saw her, he gave her a warm smile. "Good morning, Elena. I hope you slept well." She nodded. "Yes. Thank you. The room is very comfortable." He nodded in return. "I'm glad. If you ever need anything, you can just tell me." Elena noticed how calm he looked in the morning light. His movements were steady, not rushed. He handled everything with quiet confidence, cooking, moving around the kitchen, adding wood to the stove. She realized that this steadiness was something she had already come to appreciate. Caleb placed a plate on the table for her. "I made something simple today. I hope it's all right." She sat down, feeling a little shy but grateful. "It looks very good," she said softly. They ate quietly for a few minutes. It wasn't awkward silence. It was peaceful, the kind where two people simply shared a moment without needing many words. After breakfast, Caleb showed her around the ranch. He didn't hurry her. Instead, he walked slowly, explaining things in simple ways. He pointed out the barn, the horses, the fences, and the small vegetable garden behind the house. He also showed her the storage shed and the open field where he kept tools and equipment. Elena listened carefully. Everything was new to her, but he made it understandable. He told her she could help with small chores when she felt ready, but that she didn't need to rush. He wanted her to adjust at her own pace. She appreciated that more than she could express. As they walked, she noticed the workers on the ranch. There were only a few, but they seemed friendly. Caleb introduced her to them politely. They smiled and greeted her with respect. She felt welcomed but not overwhelmed. Everyone was kind, but no one asked personal questions or made her uncomfortable. Later, Caleb brought her to the small garden. "If you like, you can help here," he said. "But only if you want to. Some people enjoy gardening. It can be peaceful." Elena knelt beside the small plants. She touched the soft leaves gently. "I think I would like to try," she said. Caleb's smile grew a little. "Then I'll bring you some gloves tomorrow. We'll go slow." The rest of the morning passed with small moments like that, simple, warm, unhurried moments that made Elena feel like she belonged more than she expected. When afternoon came, the weather changed suddenly. Clouds gathered in the sky, bringing a wind that swept across the ranch. Elena watched from the window as the clouds thickened. The air grew cooler. She had always disliked storms. They reminded her of difficult memories from her past. Times when she had been alone and afraid. Caleb noticed her standing by the window, her hands held tightly together. He walked toward her and spoke softly. "It looks like a storm is coming. Don't worry. It will pass soon." Elena nodded, but her heart began to beat faster. The first drops of rain hit the roof. Soft at first, then louder as the storm grew. The wind made the windows rattle. Elena stepped back, her breath growing unsteady. She didn't want to show fear, but storms always brought uneasiness she couldn't hide. Caleb noticed immediately. He walked closer, keeping his voice gentle. "It's all right. You don't have to be scared. The house is strong. It's been through many storms." Another loud gust of wind made Elena flinch. She lowered her head, embarrassed by her fear. Caleb didn't judge her. He didn't tease her. Instead, He pulled a chair closer to the fireplace and said, "Come sit here. The sound is softer on this side of the room." Elena hesitated, then walked over slowly. She sat down, feeling a little calmer near the warm fire. Caleb took the chair next to hers, leaving just enough space so she didn't feel crowded. He spoke slowly, keeping his tone soft. "When I was younger, storms made me nervous too. But after a while, I learned that they always pass. Nothing stays forever." His calmness began to reach her. She took a deeper breath and looked at the fire. "In my old home, storms were difficult," she said quietly. "They always made me feel alone." "You're not alone anymore," Caleb replied gently. "Whenever storms come, we'll get through them together." Those simple words settled deep in her heart. She knew he meant them. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was just being honest and kind. The storm lasted for a long time. The rain beat against the windows, and the wind shook the walls again and again. But Caleb stayed with her the entire time. He talked about small things, how the ranch looked in spring, how the horses behaved when it rained, how quiet the nights were when the sky cleared. His stories were simple, but comforting. Elena found herself listening closely, feeling less and less afraid. Every time the wind howled loudly, he would pause and look at her with reassurance, as if silently telling her she was safe. When the storm finally began to weaken, the room felt warmer. The sound of the rain softened. The air changed from tense to peaceful. Elena looked up and realized her hands had stopped trembling. "See?" Caleb said with a gentle smile. "It passed." Elena nodded. "Thank you for staying with me." "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "I wanted to." His words were simple, but they held a sincerity that touched her deeply. She realized then that she had not only found a new place to live, but also a person who cared in quiet, steady ways. As evening approached, the sky cleared completely. The ranch looked fresh after the storm, like the land had been washed clean. Caleb stepped outside to check the animals, and Elena followed him. The air smelled crisp and new. She watched him move through the field, checking every detail with care, making sure the horses were calm, the fences were fine, and the barn was safe. She admired the way he worked. He wasn't just strong. He was gentle, responsible, and thoughtful. He didn't complain about the work. He didn't rush. Everything he did came from a place of care. When he returned to her, his face was relaxed. "Everything is all right," he said. Elena felt relief. She felt something else too, a growing trust in him. It formed slowly, like a seed planted in her heart, beginning to take root. They walked back to the house together. The land shimmered with the last light of the day. Elena looked around and realized the ranch didn't feel strange anymore. It felt quiet, safe, and welcoming. The fear she had arrived with was slowly fading. Inside, Caleb prepared a simple dinner. Elena helped a little, handing him vegetables and arranging the plates. They worked side by side in silence, but it was comfortable. When they finally sat down to eat, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. A sense of peace. After dinner, they talked softly about the next day. He told her she could try gardening if she liked, or help him feed the chickens. She agreed, feeling excited to learn. Before she went to bed, Caleb paused and looked at her with a gentle expression. "You did well today," he said. Elena felt warmth spread through her chest. "I'm trying," she replied softly. "I know," he said. "And that's more than enough." She went to her room with a small, honest smile. She lay down on her bed and listened to the calm night. She no longer felt like a stranger on the ranch. She no longer felt afraid of the future. She felt hope stronger than before. She had come here expecting nothing. She had agreed to a life she didn't know. But now, she realized she was beginning to find comfort in the little things. Caleb's patience, his kindness, his gentle way of understanding her fears without needing explanations. She closed her eyes, feeling a soft peace settle inside her. Maybe this place was going to be more than a new home. Maybe this man was going to be more than a stranger. Maybe kindness really was the beginning of something beautiful. The days on the ranch slowly began to form a routine that felt gentle and comforting to Elena. Each morning, she woke up to the soft sound of birds outside her window and the smell of fresh air drifting through the small cabin. The land looked different every day, sometimes bright, sometimes quiet, sometimes covered in soft mist, but it always felt peaceful. It was a peace she had never known before. Caleb continued to guide her through ranch life with patient kindness. He never made her feel rushed or incapable. Instead, he taught her slowly, step by step, until she began to feel confident in small tasks. She helped water the garden, gather eggs, and sometimes brushed the horses when they were calm. At first, she was shy around the animals, but with Caleb by her side, she grew more comfortable. One morning, as they walked toward the barn, Caleb said softly, "You're learning quickly. I'm impressed." Elena smiled shyly. "I'm trying. You make everything easy to understand." He nodded gently. "That's because you have a natural way of learning. You listen carefully." His words warmed her heart more than she expected. No one had ever praised her like that before. She felt valued in a new and unfamiliar way. As the days passed, Elena began to laugh more. At first, it surprised even her, but Caleb had a quiet sense of humor that showed up in small remarks or stories from his childhood. He told her about the first horse he ever tried to ride, and how he slipped off at least 5 times before learning how to balance. Elena laughed so hard she had to hold onto the fence to steady herself. Caleb looked at her with a smile that held both surprise and happiness. "I haven't heard you laugh like that before," he said softly. She lowered her head shyly. "I haven't laughed like that in a long time." That moment stayed with them for the rest of the day, a simple moment, but full of warmth. It felt like the beginning of something deeper. One evening, they sat on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. The sunset stretched across the land in soft colors that made everything look magical. Elena hugged her knees gently as she stared at the horizon. "Do you miss anything from your old home?" Caleb asked gently. Elena thought for a moment. "Not really," she said quietly. "There wasn't much for me there." Caleb nodded. He didn't push her to say more. Slowly, she felt her heart open in a way it hadn't before. "I used to feel very lonely," she admitted, "even when people were around me. But here, it feels different." Caleb looked at her with understanding. "You're not alone here," he said softly. "You're part of this place now." The words settled deep in her heart. She looked away, not because she didn't want him to see her face, but because she needed a moment to let the emotion settle. Over time, Elena began helping with more tasks. She learned how to feed the chickens, water the horses, and even mend small things around the house. Caleb always worked beside her, guiding her gently without ever taking over, unless she asked for help. He also began to share more about his own life. One afternoon, while they repaired a wooden gate together, Caleb spoke quietly about losing his parents when he was young. He told her how he built the ranch slowly, learning everything through experience, mistakes, and help from kind neighbors. "I didn't have much growing up," he said, "but I learned that kindness can build more than money ever could." Elena listened closely. She felt her heart pull toward him even more. She admired his strength, his sincerity, and the gentle way he handled every responsibility. As they worked, she said softly, "You've built a good life here." Caleb paused and looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "I tried," he said, "but it felt incomplete before. Now it feels different. Better." She looked down shyly, her cheeks warm. She didn't ask what made it better. Deep down, she already knew. One morning, Elena woke with a slight heaviness in her chest. Her body felt weak, and she felt faint when she stood up. She thought it would pass, but by noon she felt worse. She didn't want to worry Caleb, so she tried to continue with her chores. But as she walked toward the garden, her vision blurred slightly. Caleb noticed immediately. He stopped what he was doing and hurried toward her. "Elena? Are you all right?" She tried to smile. "I'm fine. Just a little tired." But her voice trembled. Caleb gently touched her arm, worry filling his eyes. "You're not fine. You're pale. Come inside. You need to rest." She tried to protest, but he carefully guided her to the house. He helped her sit on the bed and brought her water. He didn't hover or panic, but his quiet concern was clear in every movement. "You should have told me earlier," he said softly. "You don't have to push yourself." "I didn't want to trouble you," she whispered. Caleb shook his head gently. "You're not a trouble. You're important here." The words touched her deeply. She leaned back against the pillows as he placed a cool cloth on her forehead. He stayed by her side for hours, checking her temperature, bringing her warm soup, and making sure she rested. He didn't leave the room except to bring fresh water or prepare something helpful. Every time she opened her eyes, he was there, sitting quietly in the chair beside her bed. As the evening passed, Elena finally began to feel better. Her headache eased, and the weakness slowly faded. When she sat up slightly, Caleb let out a soft breath of relief. "You scared me," he admitted gently. "I don't like seeing you unwell." Elena looked at him with soft eyes. "Thank you for caring for me." His expression turned warm, almost tender. "Of course I care. Anyone would." But she knew not everyone would. Not everyone had treated her with such quiet concern, such patience, such gentleness. She had never experienced care like this before in her life. Something soft and warm began to grow inside her heart, stronger than anything she had felt so far. It wasn't just trust anymore. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, something that made her chest feel warm and full. For the next few days, Caleb made sure she didn't overwork herself. He handled most of the ranch chores and only asked her to rest. She felt a little guilty watching him do everything, but he always smiled and said, "I don't mind. I just want you to get better." On one of those days, Elena stepped outside to sit in the fresh air while he worked. She watched him from the porch, how he carried hay, how he checked the fences, how he talked gently to the horses. Everything he did had a kind of steady grace to it. He was strong but not harsh, hard-working but not impatient. Elena felt her heart tighten gently. She didn't know exactly when it happened, but she realized she was beginning to feel something different, something warm and deep for him. It wasn't sudden. It had grown slowly, like a small seed planted the day she stepped off the train. Every act of kindness, every gentle smile, every moment he stood beside her had watered that seed until it began to bloom. She wasn't sure what to call it yet, but she knew it was something beautiful. That evening, when Caleb came to the porch with 2 cups of warm tea, he sat beside her in comfortable silence. The evening sky glowed softly, and the air smelled of fresh grass. Elena looked at him, feeling her heart full. "Caleb," she said quietly, "thank you for everything you've done." He turned to face her, his eyes gentle. "You don't need to thank me, Elena. This is your home. You're part of this life now. I care about you. I want you to be well." The quiet sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. She looked away for a moment, trying to steady the emotion rising in her chest. She realized then that trust was not the only thing she had found here. She had begun to find love, soft, honest, patient love, and though she could not say it aloud yet, she knew that her heart had already chosen him. The days that followed were gentle and calm, almost like the land itself was taking a deep breath after all the storms that had passed. Claire woke up each morning with a new sense of peace inside her. She had spent so many years believing she was alone in the world, believing she was meant to survive on her own. But now she felt something she had never felt before: stability, kindness, and a place where she truly belonged. It was strange to her sometimes. She would wake up early and stand by the small window of the ranch house, watching the first light spread over the open fields. The soft glow reminded her that a new day had come, and she was still standing in the same place with the same man who had given her a chance at a new life. Jacob noticed her quiet moments. He usually stepped outside before sunrise to check the horses, but he always looked back at her through the doorway. Every morning he saw her standing there with her hands gently resting on the windowsill, her hair loose around her shoulders. He didn't say anything at those moments. He didn't want to disturb her thoughts. Instead, he just felt grateful that she was there, that she felt safe enough to stay. One morning, Claire joined him outside, before he could walk away. Her steps were light on the wooden porch, and she wrapped her shawl around her shoulders as she approached him. Jacob glanced at her with a welcoming smile, surprised but happy. "You're awake early," he said softly. "I didn't want to stay inside," she replied. "Not when the morning looks this peaceful." Jacob nodded, and together they walked toward the barn. The quiet around them felt easy and comfortable. It was moments like this that showed how much they had grown. They no longer needed to fill the silence with words. Being near each other was enough. Claire watched Jacob feed the horses, noticing how gently he touched them and how calmly they responded. There was something about him's strength, mixed with kindness, that always made her feel steady. She felt warmth spread through her chest as she watched him work. She had seen men before who raised their voices or moved harshly. But Jacob was different. He understood the land, the animals, and people's hearts in a way that felt natural and sincere. When he finished his work, Jacob turned toward her, brushing dust from his hands. "I was thinking," he began quietly. "We should take a ride to the far end of the pasture today. The fence there needs checking, and the view is something I want you to see." Claire agreed with a soft smile. They saddled 2 horses and began the slow ride across the fields. The air was fresh and cool, and the birds flew low as if welcoming them. Claire felt the gentle rhythm of the horse beneath her and breathed deeply. She realized how much she had changed since the day she arrived. She no longer felt tense when riding. She no longer felt like a stranger in this wide land. She felt connected not just to the ranch, but to the man riding just ahead of her. When they reached the far edge, Jacob stopped and pointed toward the horizon. "This," he said, "is my favorite place." The land stretched out in soft waves of green and gold, and the sky above seemed wider than she had ever seen. Claire looked around slowly, absorbing every detail. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Jacob looked at her, not the land. "It is," he said quietly, "and it feels even more beautiful with you here." Claire felt her heart tighten in a gentle way. She lowered her gaze for a moment, touched by his words. Jacob didn't say things just to fill the air. When he spoke, it came from a true place inside him. They sat there for a long while, enjoying the view. When they finally turned back toward the ranch, Claire felt a deeper sense of belonging settle within her. Over the next few weeks, their lives found a steady rhythm. Claire learned more about the ranch, helping with small tasks, tending to the garden, and taking care of the chickens. Jacob continued his daily work, always making time to check on her or walk beside her. They talked about small things and big things, her childhood memories, his dreams for the future, the seasons on the land, and how the world was changing around them. Every conversation drew them closer. They didn't rush anything. They just let their bond grow naturally. One evening near the end of summer, the sky turned a soft pink as they sat together on the porch. Claire rested her hands on the wooden railing, while Jacob sat beside her, close but not too close. The warm evening breeze carried the faint scent of grass and wildflowers. "Claire," he said quietly, his voice gentle, "I want to ask you something." She turned her eyes toward him, listening. "You came here expecting very little," he said, "maybe expecting nothing at all. And I don't ever want you to feel pressured or trapped. But I care for you. Truly. And I want to know if you feel at home here. With me." Claire felt her breath catch. Not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. She thought about everything she had lived through. The loneliness she had carried, the long journey to this land, the uncertain first days at the ranch, and how all of that had slowly changed into comfort, trust, and warmth. "Jacob," she said softly, "I came here thinking I had no future. But you," her voice trembled just slightly, "you gave me kindness when I expected nothing. You gave me a place where I finally feel safe." And yes, I feel at home. I truly do. Jacob's shoulders eased, and a warm expression filled his face. He didn't move suddenly. Instead, he slowly reached out and took her hand, waiting to make sure she was comfortable. She didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined naturally, like they had always been meant to find each other. From that moment on, their connection deepened in a quiet, steady way. They continued building a life filled with small moments that meant everything. Claire felt herself growing stronger each day, not because someone saved her, but because she was finally seen, respected, and valued. As autumn came, the ranch took on new colors. The air became cool, and the afternoon light grew softer. Claire spent many evenings cooking simple meals with Jacob, laughing softly as they shared stories. She began stitching small decorations around the house, adding warmth and personality to each room. Jacob noticed every little change and always complimented her work, making her smile shyly. One afternoon, as Claire hung fresh laundry outside, she saw Jacob walking toward her with a thoughtful expression. He held a small wooden box in his hands. When he reached her, he paused for a moment, gathering his courage. "I made something for you," he said quietly. Claire wiped her hands on her apron and looked at him with curiosity. Jacob opened the small box, revealing a delicate necklace with a tiny carved heart. He had shaped it from a piece of wood from one of the old trees near the pasture. The tree, he said, had stood strong for decades. "It's simple," he said, "but I carved it myself. I wanted you to have something that shows how much you mean to me." Claire touched the necklace gently. The craftsmanship was beautiful, but the meaning behind it was even more touching. She looked up at him, her eyes warm. "It's perfect," she whispered. Jacob placed the necklace around her neck, his hands steady and gentle. When he stepped back, Claire felt a soft glow inside her, knowing she had been given something made from sincerity and care. The days continued in a tender way. And by winter, Jacob and Claire had built something that felt steady and lasting. They supported each other through cold mornings, long nights, and quiet moments of reflection. They had become partners not just in work, but in heart and life. Claire often thought about the girl she once was, scared and unsure of the world. She thought about how far she had come, and she realized that true love didn't always arrive with grand gestures. Sometimes it came in the form of simple acts, patient understanding, and a steady hand reaching out when she needed it most. Jacob, too, felt grateful every day. He had lived alone for so long that he never imagined someone like Claire would enter his life. He admired her strength, her quiet determination, and her gentle heart. She brought light into his home, laughter into his evenings, and hope into his future. One snowy evening, as they sat beside the warm fireplace, Jacob looked at her thoughtfully. Claire felt his gaze and turned to meet his eyes. "Claire," he said softly, "I want to spend my life with you. Not out of duty, not out of an arrangement, but out of love. If you feel the same, I'd be honored if you stayed by my side forever." Claire felt her heart fill with warmth. She took his hand gently and nodded. "I want that too," she whispered. And in that quiet room, with snow falling softly outside, they made a promise to build a future together, based on respect, care, and genuine love. Claire had come expecting nothing, but she found everything her heart had ever longed for. Jacob showed her what true love meant, not through dramatic words, but through a lifetime of simple kindness, steady support, and a heart that chose her every single day. Their story became one of quiet strength, deep trust, and the beautiful discovery of love that grows slowly but lasts forever.